Hey everyone, Tom from Fat Dragon Games here. Today we're going to go over how to paint the wooden doors in your Dragonlock dungeon set. To start with, I've just primed this with Krylon Max Gray. Going to use some basic craft acrylics. You get these at places like Hobby Lobby, Joann Fabrics, Walmart. They're about 75 cents a bottle and it will last you a really long time. The two browns that I've selected are Bark Brown and Moccasin Brown in this particular line, but any kind of light and dark browns will do just fine for you. Basic brushes, same thing you use for miniature painting. Nothing special there. Just mix your paints up on an old styrofoam plate. Works great. You can throw it away when you're done. In addition to the two browns, we're going to use black and white for painting the woodwork. And the paints are pretty thick when they come out of the bottle, so you are going to want to thin a little bit. Just begin painting, put a base coat of the darker brown on the door. You do want to work this into all of the crevices, the spaces between the wood slats and everything. The next step is going to be doing a wash, so you want to have a good, nice, solid coat of brown to put that on. Don't worry if you get this on the metal hinges or anything at this point. You're going to be doing those later on with a silver or gunmetal color, and you'll cover up any of the brown that you get on them right now. For this tutorial, I'm just going to paint half of the door, save some time here. Get it in. If you have a little bit of gray showing on the upper faces of the slats or on the topmost parts, that's fine. The wood ages, it's going to look gray. You just don't want any of the gray showing in the crevices. This is where the wash is going to hit the heaviest, and you really don't want your gray there. But if you have some showing through on the top edges of the slats and stuff, don't worry, it just adds a little age to it. Okay, next is going to be the wash, and here I'm mixing black and the darker of the two browns. And you really want to mix a lot of water into this. I've heard some people say you want it the consistency of milk. You really want this the consistency of water, basically. Dab it on. If you get it on too thick, you can go in and just add some straight water right on the model. Just make sure it gets into all of the crevices, around all of the detail work, around the hinge, the gaps between the wood slats and stuff. You do not need to be very neat about this. We're going to go over this and retouch a lot of this in the next step, so don't worry about it. The whole key here is you want to get it into all of the little gaps, and just do that. Like I said, if you get it on too heavily, just add some straight water and it'll flow around. This is what it should look like when you're done. Again, doesn't look too neat, doesn't need to, you just want to fill in those gaps. Next up is going to be the moccasin brown, and you're going to do this in stages, and you want it thin, and you're just painting some vertical streaks into the woodwork. Maybe 2 or 3 per slat. You want some of the darker brown showing between them. That will give some definition to the wood, and if you get it on too thick, or you get it too light, you can always go back in and add a little bit of the darker brown. And you're just going to be going back and forth with this. If it's too thin, go put a second layer on. It is really whatever looks best to you. There's no right or wrong to this. For this part, I'm just mixing it straight. I'm putting it on fairly lightly, or fairly transparent, and in certain spots adding a second coat. And as you can see, by doing that, you really get a lot of variation to the brown. It looks great with the wash, and it gives you about 3 or 4 really nice tones. Once you're done with that and are happy with it, let it dry, and then I'm going to mix up just some straight black and some straight silver. I hate using straight silver for any of the stuff, so I always mix black with it, and I paint my hinges and stuff in 2 stages. So for this first stage, you're going to want to mix in a lot more black than what you might think would look good. You want a really dark, almost a gunmetal. And a little trick when you're trying to paint straight lines and stuff or something this detailed, if you notice, I've got my little finger resting against the door, and this is an old painter's trick. If your hand shakes a little bit, your hand will then push your the object you're painting the same way your brush is moving, and so it's almost as if the two are standing still if your hand does shake a little bit. But I'm just lining this in. This is the stage you've got to be really careful, and you're also going to correct a lot of the brown that you've gotten on the hinges in the earlier stages. But all I've done is gone in, and here we finished up with the three steel strips and the door handle. And as you can see, it's a really dark gunmetal gray. It's predominantly black. The next step is going to be mixing a similar color, but we're going to have more silver in it. And for this stage, it's not a dry brush. It's just got a higher concentration of silver, and we're going to blotch it in. And you're going to get about 50% coverage. So everywhere you dab a little in, you want to have a gap between between dabs that shows the darker color you did. And this will create a really splotchy, aged effect really easily. And again, it's not dry brushing. You're just kind of jamming that brush in there and making little spots of the lighter gunmetal color. And there's no right or wrong, just kind of do what looks good. But by doing this blotchy effect, it really gives a nice aged look to it. Next step is I am actually going to take some straight silver and do a quick dry brush. And this is not meant to hit the fasteners. This is more just to pick out the edges of the steel strips and stuff, the reinforcement strips and the hinges. Finish that up real quick. Once you're kind of happy with that, again, it's just to give some streaking and some aging and to pick out the edges. But don't worry about the little riveting. We're going to get that in the next step here. Take some straight silver, and again, I'm going to rest my small finger on the door so it doesn't jitter too much, and I'm just going to paint that straight silver on the top of each of those rivet heads and pick out that door handle with it. If you don't like the straight silver, mix a little bit of the black in with it, but you do want this pretty light or pretty close to the natural silver color just for contrast. It will look better on your tabletop if you do. But again, it's a matter of personal taste. You can mix this as light or as dark as you want. And when you're done with this, you can just go back and touch up any points that you weren't happy with and call it a day. Now, if you really want to make this look sharp, there's one optional step you can do, and for this I'm just taking the moccasin brown and I mixed in some white with it, and I've mixed it pretty transparent. And what I'm doing is I'm picking out one of the wooden slats of the door, and I'm just adding this very transparent glaze to it, and I'm going to build it up in a few layers. And what this will do is really pick out and kind of emphasize that it's 4 separate slats of wood for the door, and one of them doesn't quite match. And just very light glazes, build it up. So here's the finished door piece with the additional glazing on one of the slats, and as you can see, it really makes that slat stand out, and it just creates a really beautiful effect for the overall door. Thank you very much for checking us out. We will be adding more painting tutorials for the Dragon Lock line to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, please come over to the Fat Dragon Games forums. We'll be happy to help you out.